If any of you haven't gotten to meet Pam Hanson, then you need to enroll in home ec at Sioux Central High School, and you'll get yourself well educated. So, Pam, we are very grateful for your sharing with us tonight.
I was going to say sound effects by God, right? I was like, this is all it took for some rain, I'm glad to be of service here. Hello, my name is Pam Hanson, and tonight I'm going to be sharing a message called The Storm. Which one are you? You don't have to raise your hand. I might be able to pick you out. Do you love Hallmark movies, or do you despise the Hallmark movie? Let's face it, some people love to know the beginning, the middle, and the end, and some people love the suspense of knowing that the guy's gonna come from town, find a small town girl, maybe make some gingerbread houses, have a snowball fight while the snow is gently falling, go to the Christmas tree lot, they'll save the town together and it will end with a kiss. Are you that person? Because I am. But some of you would rather have a real suspense thriller, and I can understand that too. In our reading tonight, Jesus had been on a non-stop mission. Healing, casting out demons, turning water into wine, feeding thousands, just a few loaves, and teaching and questioning how the Pharisees practiced their religious laws. We can assume that Jesus and his disciples must have been exhausted. But Jesus told them to cross to the other side, and they were obedient. It was dark, and it was not like crossing Okoboji. After researching a bit, this lake was more like an ocean that had crazy wind patterns, and you did not cross at night. These were experienced fishermen, so they were not new to this lake. I found this picture. Oops, sorry, my bad. I found this picture, and it is actually one that dated back to being found on the shores of during the time of Jesus. I'm not suggesting that this is the boat, but what this is a vessel that could have looked just like it. I don't know if you would have hopped in that boat and put your head on a cushion and fell sound asleep, but it would have probably not happened for this person here. Different versions of the Bible describe the winds a little differently. A terrible storm, a violent storm, a furious squall, a fierce gale of wind. In any case, it threatened to flood and capsize the boat. And Jesus lay sleeping on a cushion, sound asleep. We are often going about our day, our life, and suddenly a terrible, violent, fierce storm arrives. Some are Category 1 storms, and some are Category 5. The one thing I can tell you about storms is they don't always warn you they're coming. Death, accidents, sickness, divorce, miscarriage, just to name a few. But the one thing we can be sure of is that storms will come. The Bible even says we should expect them. About 10 years ago, I found myself in a storm. I was at work, and I got a call, get to the hospital. Our daughter had been in a car accident, a few bumps and bruises, but she should be okay is what I heard. But when I walked into the hospital and realized she couldn't feel her legs and that life flight was landing soon, I could feel that panic just rise in my chest. She would later undergo surgery that night to minimize her spinal cord damage from her shattered L1 vertebrae. Let me tell you, you find out what you got in a storm. You find out who you're married to in a storm. You find out the necessity of your family and your friends in a storm. and you find out about the power of prayer in a storm. Literally, those are the things that you are clinging to. They are keeping you afloat. You never know God is all you need until you face a large gale of wind that wants to capsize your boat. I remember praying and pleading, sleepless nights, panicking, questioning. I can relate to those disciples who seemed so panicked and unfaithful, frantic. Frantically, the disciples wakened him. "Teacher, teacher," they shouted, "don't you even care that we are about to drown?" They panicked. They resorted back to what they previously had known before they knew Jesus: crisis, panic, and of course, fear. Notice that Jesus did not prevent the storm from happening, but he let them experience it. Fear. A word I am all too familiar with, unfortunately. The enemy waits until you're sick and tired, you're weak, you're overwhelmed, you're scared to death, and then he creeps in. That is where I found myself. I let fear creep in, or I let the creep create fear in me. I let worry become a place where I let the enemy take a hold of me. Over the course of a few years in therapy, my daughter became strong again, and she was independent, and she was determined to show her calf at the Clay County Fair, and golf, and play volleyball, and all the things. And I suggested to her that she should avoid all dangerous activities. But my mom told me that I should not break her spirit, that there are worse things than injury in a storm, and I needed to let her do this. I carried fear into my other children. I even started to identify as anxiety, worry, and fear as if it was just who I was. I was telling myself, oh, I'm a worrier. It's genetic. I'm from a family of worriers, okay? I had all the stories, and I was convincing. Our son Jake bought his first car, and oddly, with my consent. Clearly, I wasn't thinking through any of this other than the nostalgia of my grandpa having one. But seriously, a 1978 Black Knight El Camino, no airbags, an old-fashioned seatbelt, and weird lights. Even though he proved to be a very safe driver, I probably followed him to school for the first 3 months. Along with that, Jake played every sport and seemed to find himself in what I would consider the most dangerous of all the positions: the pitcher, positive he'd take a line drive to the head, and every time he was tackled in football, you could find me literally praying in the stands, just get up, just get up, just get up. Tom wouldn't even sit by me at the games. The fear of injury and health had just started to chip away at my confidence and made me second guess or question even the decisions I was making. I was afraid to make wrong decisions, so I even avoided decisions or even passed them off to other people. In 2016, my mom abruptly died. Without any diagnosis. We literally just spent the entire day shopping together, and she was telling me all about the wedding that she had just been to the night before. And hours later, she is being life-flighted to Sioux Falls. From what we understand, that she had something like an asthma attack that left her without oxygen. She was actually the pillar to our family, and many of you might say our community. Shortly after my mom passed, my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer on the same day that Tom was life-flighted to Sioux Falls for a double embolism. At this point, I was just wondering if I should get a frequent flyer pass for my family. My dad fought hard, but ultimately passed almost 3 exact years from when my mom died. These two people were people that challenged me, provided sound advice, encouraged me, and prayed for me. When they were not here, with me on earth, I held on even tighter to the control that I thought I felt I needed. Okay. The strange part surrounding this time period was that under the circumstances, I thought I was doing really good. But looking back, my anxiety became something I dealt with constantly. I tried to control everything. I worried constantly. I wasted time worrying about everything that never happened. I could even tell you that I had to take medication for my anxiety attacks that would happen frequently. God works in faith, but Satan works in fear. I listened to Joyce Meyer's sermon this morning, and she was talking about a crack in her basement foundation. And she stated that when there is a crack in your foundation, it turns into a big mess when the storm comes. Just like water flooding my basement, the crack in my foundation was leaking into my everyday life and affecting my peace and my joy. Now, I know many of you are smack dab in the middle of your own storms, worse storms than my own. Storms that seem overwhelming and never ending, and many of you are facing storms that you literally don't know how you're going to make it through. We see in the Bible constant examples of storms. In fact, the greatest people in the Bible passed through storms that seemed literally impossible. David steps up as a shepherd boy to defeat Goliath with stones and becomes the king of God's people. And Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers, became promoted to chief administrator just so he could help his brothers. Paul was shipwrecked multiple times, beaten, flogged, imprisoned, hungry, and left to die, but wrote several books of the Bible. You can see where I'm going with this. We need storms to get to the good stuff. 2 Corinthians 4, 8 through 10, we are pressed on every side by troubles, but not crushed and broken. We are perplexed because we don't know why things happen as they do, but we don't give up and quit. We are hunted down, but God never abandons us. We get knocked down, but we get up again and keep on going. These bodies of ours are constantly facing death, just as Jesus did. So it is clear to all that it is only the living Christ within us who keeps us safe. I was trying to control everything when it was God's to control in the first place. If we consider diamonds and how rare and special they are, we know that they only exist because of extreme pressure and temperature and time. They are known as one of the strongest materials, and when polished and chiseled, they are the most beautiful of gems. It takes time and pressure and chiseling, and God allows the storm to give us the opportunity to know him in a way that no one else does. God presses us, chisels away at us, and polishes us to become brilliant diamonds, not because he wants bad things for us or that he wants us to be beautiful. He doesn't want us to hurt, but he wants us to reflect his brilliant light. We grow in trials. God can do his best work in a storm, and we may not see or feel his presence in the storm, but his promises to be there are true. Without a test, there is no testimony. Several things have happened in my life that are helping me break free from this chain of fear, and it is only by the grace of God that these events have happened, and I feel compelled to tell you just a few. And I'm sorry if this is getting a little long. My teacher friend invited me to a book study by an author, Jennifer Dukesley. She is a Christian author born and raised in Lorenz, Iowa. I really liked the book and shared it with my friend who is going through several storms of her own. She invited me back to a weekend in Okoboji where Jennifer Dukesley was actually hosting a 2-day weekend, and she invited her sister as well. Both of these women were going through difficult times of loss, their husband and a child. It was clear to me when we got there that this was going to be helpful. Her whole book was about seasons, and we had to kind of go into this with figuring out what season we were in. So it was easy to tell from my friends that they were in the winter season. But not me. I got up and declared I was spring and I was blooming. Things were great. I was optimistic. I didn't even recognize that they were having an intervention. Once again, we live our lives forward and we understand them backwards. And all along, I have never once doubted that I loved God and He loved me. I went to church, I prayed often, and maybe even a little too often with all my fears going on. But I had a crack in my foundation that I couldn't even see. My friend didn't let up. In fact, she invited me to go to the IF conference in Fort Dodge, and as I was sitting there, I wrote in my notebook, register for Joyce Meyer Love Life Conference, San Antonio 2023. My mom was a huge Joyce Meyer fan, and I am not sure what prompted me that day to think I needed to go to San Antonio, but the nudge didn't go away. So my friend and I bought our tickets, invited my sister-in-law, Lisa, and who had also been listening to Joyce's messages in the morning and had been encouraging me to listen as well. And she invited a friend who had no idea what she was saying yes to, but she went. I will not go into all of the details of how the devil wanted us to lose our joy on this trip, but a short list will make you laugh. With 2 major flight delays, one so major they had to fly a pilot into the airport while we were sitting on the tarmac to fly us home. We landed at an unidentified airport, and so even the pilot felt sorry for us, and he got us to our second airport. We lost our rental car and had no air conditioning when we found it, and it was 100 degrees. We lost one of our 2 hotel reservations. We had an emergency evacuation from our hotel. We nearly had traffic that prevented us from getting to the destination we were heading to. We hadn't eaten all day long, and we made some really poor shoe choices. But God did provide. And weirdly enough, the first night we were there, we met this woman sitting by herself. She invited us to dinner. And from that point on, she got us front row seats to the whole conference. So we end up having the best time. Ultimately, what happened in this pilgrimage has changed me. I can't tell you what it was. I can't describe the peace that seriously has come over me. The Holy Spirit has been working in me, and God has been chiseling away at me, polishing me so that I can shine His light through me. I can't even think of where this would fit into my Hallmark movie, but what I do know is that God works for good. He provides a way. He has steadied me in the storm. He has planted me on firm ground. He works through others to show me His goodness and mercy. He used believers, friends, and family to provide a float, and He encouraged me, to invite others. Because I am a sinner, this journey is not over, but manageable. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And that means me, and that means you. When the disciples woke up Jesus, He rebuked the wind and waves, and there was a great calm. The disciples had been with Jesus as He performed all of these miracles, yet they still lacked faith. But Jesus didn't give up on them. He taught them that the presence of God can take you through anything. He was teaching them how to get through storms because they were going to face some pretty bad ones, spreading his gospel. Just like he taught the disciples, Jesus is teaching me to be steady and stable. He knew they would face so many storms ahead, but he calls us to be steadfast, slow to react, vigilant, discerning. So when we see the storm clouds forming and the wind start to blow and the lightning in the sky, do a check on your foundation. And just know he is there and he is helping you get to the other side if you just let him. Before I end tonight, I want to quote Priscilla Schreier in her message called, "Who's Your Daddy?" And I hope this is a reminder to all of us that God is going to meet you where you're at in the middle of your storm. He'll be right there. I had believed in God my whole life, but I was not tapping into who God was to me. I was going through the motions and not experiencing the relationship that ultimately has given me peace that surpasses the understanding. Priscilla says, she looks into the mirror and asks, "Girl, who's your daddy?" Then she reminds herself, he is the beginning and the end. He is the keeper of creation and the creator of all. He's the architect of the universe and the manager of all time. He always was, he always is, he always will be, unchanged, undefeated, and never undone. He was bruised, but brought healing. He was pierced, but eased pain. He was persecuted, but brought freedom. He is risen to bring power, and he reigns to bring peace. He is light, he is love, he is longevity, and he is the Lord. He is goodness and power, faithfulness, and he is God. He is righteous, powerful, and pure. His ways are right, his will is eternal. His mind is unchanging, and his mind is on us. He is our Savior, our God, our peace, our Lord, our comfort, our joy, and he rules our life. He is the wisdom of the wise and the power of the powerful, the leader of the leaders and the Ancient of Days, the ruler of all rulers. His goal was a relationship with me. He'll never leave you, never mislead you, never forsake you, never forget you, never overlook you, and never cancel your appointment in his appointment book. When you fall, he's going to lift you up, and when you fail, he will forgive you. When you're weak, he is strong. When you are afraid, he is your courage. When you are broken, he will mend you. And when you are blind, he will lead you. When you are hungry, he will feed you. When you face trials, he is with you. When I face persecution, he shields me. And when I face problems, he will comfort me. When I face loss, he will provide for me. And when we face death, he will carry us home to meet him. He is everything to everyone, every time, everywhere, in every way. He is your God, and that is who you belong to. The God in you can do more than you can ever think of or ask for. No Hallmark ending here, because no writer could ever predict the abundant life you could live. Thanks for listening.